I wanted to discuss the Nipsey Hussle shooting and the reality of black crime. Hey, what's going on, folks? Eric Moser here with Cobra Conversations. I really don't get into a lot of the modern hip-hop scene because of too much of the prevalence of glorifying violence in the language. It isn't my style. I see people are finally having a conversation in an area that I think is definitely overlooked. And oftentimes those of us who bring it up are criticized. So many times, or in more recent history, over the last 8 years in particular, maybe a little more, when much of the emphasis has been placed on police violence, police brutality, and things of that nature, and about bigotry, racism, institutional racism, quote unquote. There are many of us who say that as real as some of those situations are, now we can have a debate about certain aspects of those points, which I often do. There are many of us who say that the issues within the black community that are self-inflicted are our biggest concerns. There are many of us who say issues such as the homicides a year that we inflict upon ourselves, the vast majority, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of those that we inflict upon ourselves, that those are the biggest issues. The fatherless home rate, the glorification of criminality within the black community. There are many of us who will point to that as the biggest problem and say that, yeah, there are issues, racism is real. There are other problems that are affecting us, but until we can honestly take a look within, we'll never be able to rectify the biggest issues that are plaguing us. And I'm hearing the conversation being had where more people are speaking out on it, speaking out on the fact of these issues, and I'm thankful for that. As a career law enforcement officer, it burdens me because I've seen the plague, I've seen the effects of crime and the glorification of the criminal mind, the glorification of criminality, of the criminal lifestyle. I've seen the effects of it. Working in the prison, working in the jails, patrolling the streets, working in gangs. I've seen the effects of it, and the effects are overwhelmingly damaging. And yes, there are groups out there who actively seek to address these issues. Absolutely. There are groups out there who speak out on these issues. No question about it. But on a national scale, it's been years, I would say decades almost, since this has been an issue where people weren't criticized for bringing it up. And that's where we are. That's where we've been. And I pray that eyes are truly opened to the damning and overwhelming effect that this has had on the black community. We have to wake up to the reality of the harm and damage that we have inflicted upon ourselves. I honestly don't care about racism to the extent that blatant and open racism is not welcomed in our culture today. It just is not. You try to be a racist and let that become well known in the public. See what happens. You will lose everything that you have. Post something racist or bigoted on the internet and let that get out. You can potentially lose your job. We are in a completely different culture than the one that I grew up on. Growing up in the 70s and in the 80s. Completely different culture. Whereas racism is not welcomed, it is not accepted by the masses. That's why I don't think it's the issue that a lot of people make it out to be. Yes, it's real. Some people are affected by it. But we have come a tremendously long way. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. But there are people out there, there are entities out there that would like you to believe that this is the single greatest problem affecting the black community, affecting people of color. And I would say that's absolutely not the case. When we make up, in particularly the black male population, when we make up less than 6% of the population, and we are responsible for over 50% of the robberies, over 50% of the homicides, when we're responsible for an overwhelming majority of the violent crimes that are committed in our nation, something is wrong. And we can't always point the finger at white folks, at the white man, for being the reason why we are where we are today. We can't do that. We can't do that while trying to be honest. So I pray that these situations, this unfortunately tragic situation, the taking of any human life is always horrific. So I pray that this situation would open the door for a real, not only a conversation, but seeking true remedies to these problems. We have to do better. And there are many reasons in my mind why we've done that. Our abandonment of God. We have systematically dug our own graves. And we do it every time we bring harm upon each other. So I would just like for us to continue this. Hopefully you guys, if you appreciated this video, if you guys would pass it along. Hopefully somebody will be blessed by it. Hopefully it'll cause people to think. Now, I know it's not always popular to address these things. No one likes looking in the mirror. Looking in the mirror and honestly saying that you are your biggest problem hurts. It's painful. But that's where true change can begin, when we acknowledge our own guilt in any situation, especially when it comes to our own lives. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks for listening.